Hello, thank you so much for clicking on to this video. This is Jade Marie with Jade's Jewels. Today I am at such a historical place. I am at the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham, Alabama, that is most known for the act of domestic terrorism that was conducted here against Black and African American people. Today is a Sunday. It is June 28th today, and to be honest with you, they are actually hosting service today. And so if you can hear them, they are still worshiping. Of course, they're probably streaming live due to COVID-19. But right now, I'm standing on the steps of this historical place. It's right across the street from the Civil Rights Museum that is here in Birmingham. And then adjacent from the church is the park that has actually been memorialized, and there are several statues there. I wanted to do this video because today yesterday I came out here and I actually received a real history lesson from a man named Tony who has lived here his entire life, but he was actually alive during the bombings. He was a younger child at that time, but he does still remember what occurred. The reason why I'm doing this video is because, of course, right now the temperature and the atmosphere in our country in regards to civil rights, as well as in regards to the recent deaths and the consistent deaths of African American people, particularly at the hands of police and law enforcement. A couple of weeks ago, I did a video, maybe 2 weeks ago, I did a video on Jim Crow laws. But the reason why I wanted to come back and do a video here at such a historic place is because Birmingham, Alabama was known for being one of the most violent cities towards African American people. We do also know, as far as data as well as historically, that Alabama as well as Mississippi were the two states that had the most lynchings. And so, of course, lynchings were where people of African American descent were murdered at the hands of white, Caucasian, Anglo-Saxon individuals. But another part of that is a big piece of what we see today with Black men and women and even children dying at the hands of law enforcement. A big piece of what we see and what a lot of individuals feel is that it's basically a modern way of lynching individuals, because individuals who are meant to keep our cities and our communities safe are sometimes, and it's not all police, we already know that, so anyone with good sense knows that it's not all police, but there are some police that are white supremacists oftentimes, or they're just some police who don't have an equitable solution or mindset and mind frame in the communities that they serve. And so again, what we're seeing today with individuals consistently dying at the hands of police brutality, and even beyond that, what we've seen historically in our legislation for African American people, and how there have been consistent laws created to disenfranchise the African American community. A part of those laws were Jim Crow. I've already done the video about Jim Crow, but we know that these Jim Crow laws were based on a fictional character from Thomas D. Rice, a fictional character that put on blackface, and basically what he did was he created fear, and he also created ignorance for white communities in terms of their perception of African American people. The sun is going back right now, and it's cars. I'm in a live area, so I hope that the sound is okay, but I still wanted to make sure that I took a couple of minutes to honor this place. Number one, honor the 4 young girls who passed away here, and again, just talk about what actually occurred. It was a bombing here, and at the time when the bombing occurred, a couple of things. Number one, there was a lot of organizing going on, community organizing for African American people. We were mobilizing them, there were groups that were mobilizing, and organizing as well. So excuse me for that. But basically, this church, this historic church, and let me flip this around. This historic church had been known as a hub for individuals that were organizing to, number one, educate African American people on how to vote, but then also a lot of the education that was going on and a lot of the organizing that was going on was to actually end Jim Crow. I'm gonna go across the street so you all can see how huge and massive and gorgeous this church is. But what was going on and why this church was particularly targeted was that there was beginning to this church, and not only this church, but in Alabama there was a lot of momentum gaining in terms of people that they saw the evils of Jim Crow. Martin Luther King had already been down here long before the girls where the church was bombed and the girls were murdered. So Martin Luther King had already been here. Fred D. Shuttlesworth, he was one of the biggest organizers here in this community that actually lived here. And what happened was this church was a place where leaders, organizers, and people could meet and talk about the letters and just acts and steps that were being taken to basically petition for Jim Crow laws and segregation to no longer exist. This is why this place was targeted. African American people on their own accord were, and there were others. I do want to also make this clear. There were many white Americans, Anglo-Saxon, Caucasian Americans that also were helping to write laws, helping to create legislation, helping to just help this movement gain momentum. And essentially what happened was whites were targeted, their families were threatened. Any white lawyer or anyone who was just trying to work with this group of people, they were particularly targeted. But then also this church was targeted because it essentially was a big part of the movement. And so what white supremacists did, individuals in the Ku Klux Klan, individuals who represented the Aryan Nation flag, and essentially individuals who did not just basically respect life, regardless of an individual's color. We have all been granted life on this earth. And it's one thing to not like someone, but it is another thing to specifically not like someone or particularly hate an entire class of people because of the color of their skin. And so this church was a big part of what was trying to change in Birmingham. And long before the bombing of the 16th Street Baptist Church, white men, particularly, these were men who were doing this, white men were on a regular basis bombing the homes of black people, bombing their communities, bombing their places of business. Birmingham at one point in time was actually known as Bombingham because of the amount of bombs and threats, but actually just the bombs that were taking place within the black community. And so unfortunately what happened at this particular location was that there was a bomb placed on the east side of the church, and it's right here by this sign. So if you ever come to this location, you'll know. Flip this camera around. The bombs are on this side of the church. And just from my history lesson of what I learned, this church has multiple levels, but essentially it was placed right over here on this side. And 4 young girls, they were in the bathroom getting ready for Sunday school. And essentially the bomb detonated at 10:22. What really struck my heart about this, and again, there is going to be some background noise because I'm outside and I cannot control this environment, so just excuse the background noise. But what particularly just broke my heart about this event was that this event happened in 1963. In 1963, I'm gonna get in the shade, number one, so I can be more comfortable. This particular event happened in 1963. It took over 12 years for the individuals who caused this event to even begin to be brought to justice. They were able to walk free for over 12 years. One particular individual, two other men, one man died a free man. He died a free man. He was able to take the life of 4 young girls, and still over 14 to 20 people were also injured. Cars were destroyed from the explosion, things of that nature. One man died a free man. Another individual still was able to basically have a full life. All of them essentially had a full life, but it still took 12 years for these men to be brought to justice. But yet, when a black man is selling a Lucy cigarette or a CD, or walking home with a bag of Skittles, or wearing a hoodie, or going to sleep in a Wendy's parking lot, because we've all had a long night, a late night, and we needed that fourth meal, and he dozed off in a parking lot and he died at the hands of law enforcement. But yet and still, this same law enforcement and this same system, when it comes to white men committing crimes, we never see the same level of aggression. And that's why people are angry. That's why people are upset. And that's why particularly the black community is asking, how long? How long will we have to hurt? How long is it for us to just be discriminated against, to be murdered in the streets, and for people to say, well, he had a record. One time when he was 14, he did, they will dig up dirt to justify murder. But yet and still, here at this very site, it took 12 years. That just, it stung to be an American, to be someone of African descent. That particularly stung, to know that one man died a free man. He lived his life. And another thing that I also wanted to mention is that white men, Caucasian individuals, why has it always been so easy for them to obtain weapons of mass destruction? Dynamite, guns, automatics, magazines, all of this AKs, and all of this heavy artillery. We know that they are known historically, whether they have had a history, a military history, or a military experience or not, they have always had their hands on weapons, and they say it's in defense, and I'm all for people doing whatever they have to do. I'm not against anyone owning a gun. But why is it that we always see this particular demographic of people? It is so easy for them to obtain weapons of destruction, and it's even easier for them to use those against people of African descent. I want you all to look up the 16th Street Baptist Church bombing. It will indeed hurt you. It will break your heart. One of the young ladies was 11, and I think the other young ladies were about 13. They did not deserve to die. Yes, it caused change, but my question is, why wasn't change already happening? And even now, we see so many people dying, and we're still really looking for the same change. People were mad because black people were saying, hey, I don't want to be treated as a second-class citizen. who deserves to be treated as a second-class citizen, particularly the demographic of people that have built most of America. In every major city, at the hands of African American people, was the labor, the construction of these places that we enjoy even now. So please do your research, educate yourselves, know why these things are extremely important, and know that even now today we still feel the residue of Jim Crow. We still feel the residue. When that movie came out, When They See Us, me myself, I have not seen the movie in its entirety, but When They See Us is essentially talking about Jim Crow. Your perception of a dark complected individual, what goes through your mind when you see someone of dark skin? And this is even for African American Black people. We have allowed social programming to get into our heads, even in regards to how we look at ourselves, how we look at the other people within our community. We need to question that. We need to figure out, how can I just reprogram myself to make sure that I am not looking at someone thinking that whether we're saying that they're less than, whether we're saying that they're not pretty, whether we're saying that whatever, any negative association that you have with dark skin, if whether you're a white individual, an African American individual, or any other nationality, we have to call that into question. Do your research, people. Educate yourself to know why Black Lives Matter. Why, yes, why it's not all lives matter. All lives. It's not about all lives when for over 400 years, Black lives have been taken advantage of, disenfranchised, murdered, raped, stolen from, rioted. There were riots after this bombing, and 2 other young men died. Boys. We're talking about children who died because of white supremacy. That is not right. And still we see children. Tamir Rice. We see children dying. Trayvon Martin. This cannot continue. Our climate has to change. Our mindset has to elevate. We are human beings. And for anyone who does not know this, look up history. All life, any form of life, began in Africa. Only Black women have the DNA and the biology to create all types of life. Our mitochondrial DNA, and I'll do a video on that as well. But we have to understand that we cannot continue to hate other people because of the way that they look. I hope you all enjoyed this video. I just wanted to come here because I was out here yesterday. I was definitely moved to tears, and I had so many emotions. I just needed to take everything in. It was not time for me to make the video yesterday, but today it was. And this is a part of history. And look, we see that people recognize the history behind this. All people recognize the history behind this. It's not just recognizing the history, though. It's making sure that we elect leaders that recognize equitable solutions, racial equity, and racial equality. It's not about coming and taking a picture. It's not about saying, I understand. It's not about even saying, I have Black friends. We have to go beyond that. This happened in 1963. So not even really 70 years ago. Not like 60, 70 years ago. So that means that this was some people's grandfathers and grandmothers still have this mindset. Some people's mothers and fathers still have this mindset. We're not talking about the 1600s. We're talking about the 19th century, the 20th century. And even now, we still see these things occurring. Why? It is a generational curse, but it must change. It starts with us. It starts inside. But then after we do the work inside of our hearts, we have to come back and do the work outside. We have to demonstrate it outside. We have to show others outside. We have to become the light. And then we have to be the light. We do have to vote. A part of the reason why this place was bombed was because of voter suppression. People were trying to scare black people from voting. Civil rights was gaining momentum. There were people who were allying with black people. That's why this place was bombed. So please stop saying votes don't matter. Elections are rigged. I mean, trust me, I love a good conspiracy theory. But if all of that is true, then why has there been so much voter suppression? Please educate yourself. It's no way all of this momentum will be placed on voter suppression historically for decades. It's no way, if votes didn't matter, that there would not be such a great effort. Even now, even in Georgia, even in Tennessee, plenty of states, we still see acts of voter suppression. In Kentucky, one of the counties that has the biggest black population, there were very few places to vote, and Kentucky still showed out. So shout out to Kentucky. But we still see the disenfranchisement of African American people, and we must do better. We must educate ourselves. We must stop being still, being silent, just posting on Facebook. Read, gain knowledge, so you will know why. Trust me, I love a good Facebook post as well, but beyond that, the work has to go beyond that. I hope you all enjoyed this video. Definitely, again, I had to get some of my words together, and that's okay, but this is a very historical place where lives were lost, and we know why. Lives are still being lost, and we know why. So it is time for a change in our hearts, change in our minds, as well as systemic change within our government, legislative change within our government, local, state, and federal. It all matters. Please comment, like, share, subscribe. Let me know if you have any questions. I would love to answer them or try to get some information and resources to you so that you can also gain knowledge. I'm out.